Welcome to Open Books, Open Minds, our monthly television show sponsored by the Friends of the Ashland Library. Welcome. Tonight we have George Byron Wright, who is visiting us from Portland. He's written 3 books called that together are called the Oregon Trio. They're based on historical events, but they're fictional accounts. Welcome, George. Thank you for being here.
Nice to be here. Appreciate it. This is the prologue, just a page and a half. Before the last floating piece of glass hit the ground in the early morning hours, Roseburg was a flashpoint broadcast around the world. Headlines from Los Angeles to Okinawa shouted that on August 7, 1959, in a place called Roseburg, Oregon, there had been a horrific explosion. People were dead, the town mangled. Within days, movie-tone newsreels confirmed those headlines across the nation. The town that had been a town since 1852 was on its knees but unbowed. Now, instead of being known for having the largest reserve of uncut timber of any county in America, Roseburg was the town that blew up. 58% of Douglas County's residents worked in the woods and in the mills, but the visiting curious saw only the ugly hole in the ground. On the way back to where they came from, they dodged hurtling log trucks as numerous as taxis in New York City, but they just talked of pungency and death and destruction. Roseburg was now famous for being maimed. The powder truck had been driven innocently into town on Thursday night and parked on Pine Street in front of Garrettson Building and Supply. Signs on all sides of the aluminum-bodied truck spelled out explosives in 5-inch high letters. The bright red van carried a cocktail of dynamite and a blasting agent made of ammonium nitrate pellets, ground walnut shells, and diesel oil, 10,000 pounds in all. But it was late. The dangerous cargo would be delivered to the powder magazine outside of town the next morning. The driver of the truck went to the Umpqua Hotel and to bed. While he slept fitfully, the Garrettson Building caught fire, the sirens screamed, the heat grew, and his red truck exploded. In the days following, Roseburg became the subject of official study and public preoccupation. Curiosity seekers flooded in by car, planes flew over, and the streets were crowded with those wanting to see the disaster firsthand. With ceaseless sound of circling aircraft overhead, an entourage soon arrived from the state capitol led by Oregon's young governor in his summer weight suit. A delegation consisting of the mayor, the police chief, the commander of the National Guard, and the news media trailed along with the man. They climbed over debris, inhaled the foul air, and stood above the bomb crater. They looked in, pursed their lips, and shook their heads, then said, "My, oh my." The governor encouraged people to support Roseburg's recovery. He was sincere, and everyone was photographed. Now, Ross and Maybill live up on a hillside in Roseburg that looks down into the town, and I looked a long time for that hillside to have them so they have proximity, a good view of where the explosion was. And they've had their first board meeting after the blast, and the colonel's in a coma, the VA hospital, and Ross has been appointed interim director of the foundation, but Miss Emmeline calls him out to her house to have a talk about how things are going, because it's not starting off right. So this is his coming home from a visit with Miss Emmeline. He has a bouquet of roses from her garden for Maybill. Ross drove home with Miss Emmeline's roses on the seat beside him and wondered how best to tell Maybill that the earth had tilted since breakfast. But she wasn't there, just a note on the kitchen table. Golf tournament meeting at the country club. TV dinners are in the freezer. See you around 9. He found a vase in the cupboard above the sink, plunked the roses down in the middle of the dining room table, preheated the oven to 350, then let a sliced ham, Swanson frozen dinner incinerate while he watched the local news on television. With the manager of the Chamber of Commerce declaring the blast might prove to be a blessing for Roseburg, Ross threw the burnt mess in a warped aluminum tray in the garbage. He snapped the television off, mixed a bourbon and 7, and went out on the patio. He was still there when Maybill came home. He heard her car door slam and felt his body tense. She called his name a couple of times before finding him sitting calmly, looking down into the lights of the town. She plopped onto the lounge next to him. "I'm exhausted. What are you drinking?" "Oh, not that. Would you be a dear and fix me a gin and tonic?" "Thank you." She kicked off her heels as he walked off, rubbed each foot inside. When he returned with her drink and sat down again, a late summer dusk had settled in, and the warm day began to cool. It was really quite pleasant. They sat together and sipped their drinks. Seemed to be living the good life, at least the neighbors would say they were. After all, they were armbrusters. "I never asked you," he said, breaking the silence, "why Carleton? Of all the colleges you could have attended, why there?" She laughed. "Where'd that come from?" "I don't know," he said, "just popped in my mind." "Why did you?" She swallowed some more gin and leaned her head back on a plastic pillow, and she laughed again. "You want to know the truth? It was simply so I wouldn't end up at Oregon State where all the local boys went. And to find you, dear." "Well, that might have been true once," he said. Now, don't pout," she teased. "Doesn't become you. Love moves on and we grow up. You didn't expect to live the college life forever, did you? That was a playpen. We were in our prime, and we were absolutely the best physical animals we would ever be. God, we had fun. Even learned something." Carleton was small, far away, and Sally Nichols, a girl from Eugene that I knew, went there. So I did. Simple, really. Had to go to college. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I lost my... Couldn't be who we are in this town and not go to college. So all of that, and to end up be able to talk to boys at the dinner table. She swirled the ice cubes in her glass. And I have ever since. Now, why'd that pop into your head? "Oh, Miss Emmeline asked me to come out to her place this afternoon and talk about the foundation," he said. "That's where the roses came from, then. Thought you were being romantic. Fat chance." She chuckled. "So what about Aunt Emmy?" "We got into a discussion about life's grand plans," he said. "She wanted to know what mine was." "I can tell her," Maybelle said. "Oh, and what is, or was, my grand plan?" he asked. "Go to Carleton, marry a rich girl, and take life easy," she replied. Ross turned to her and looked at her. "You really think that?" "Sure," she said. "Same reason everybody was there. Get that degree, marry up, and enjoy security and position." "You really thought that of me, May?" he asked again. "Don't be hurt," she said, not in so many words at the time, but when it all became together, us, marriage, where we'd live, then yeah. Why not? Life is 90% strategy, 10% passion, I say. And Ross, honey, we used up our whole 10% at Carleton. "Well, that's cynical," he said. "So what are we doing now? Is this the strategy part?" "Now you're being petty," she said. "I'm going in, take a bath, and go to bed. Coming?" She swung her legs around and stood, holding her shoes and her glass. When she started for the door, Ross said, "A lot of money is missing from the foundation." He felt her pause in the shadows. "They think I took it." Explosion. So.
Thank you for watching Open Books, Open Minds. We've been pleased to have you here. We're filming on location with George Byron Wright. These are his books, Tillamook 1952, Roseburg 1959, and Baker City 1948. You can read them at your local library or buy them from your local independent bookstore. Thank you again for joining us to Open Books, Open Minds, sponsored by the Friends of the Ashland Library.